London, December 2025. Within the suffocating silence of Buckingham Palace, a new chapter, and perhaps the final one, of the Windsor Civil War has been written. This is no longer about leaked stories or anonymous briefings. King Charles III, a monarch who has spent the better part of his reign balancing the compassions of a father with the duties of a king, has finally signed what constitutional experts are calling the Decree of Absolute Boundary. This decree is far more than a mere administrative update. It is a profound redefinition of royal legitimacy in the digital age. Its core strikes at the very heart of a wound that has remained open for over 5 years, the commercialization of the crown for global profit. The king has issued a new letters patent, a rare and powerful legal instrument, which mandates that any title bestowed by the crown, including the dukedom of Sussex, will be subject to immediate, automatic suspension if used to amplify commercial ventures that undermine the neutrality and dignity of the monarchy. The impact of this in Montecito has been described as a total blackout. For the Sussex camp, the titles of Duke and Duchess are not merely honors. They are the foundation of a multi-million-dollar business. From Netflix documentaries to global publishing deals, the Sussex brand is built on the gold-leafed prestige of the Windsor name. By signing this decree, Charles has effectively initiated a structural divorce between royal status and private monetization. The secret behind this decisive strike is not rooted in anger, but in institutional survival. Internal sources reveal that the palace has been quietly tracking audience sentiment across the United States and the Commonwealth. The data was undeniable. The global public is fatigued by the cycle of grievance. King Charles, encouraged by Prince William, realized that their previous restraint was being weaponized against them. They understood a fundamental truth of power. Silence is only effective if it eventually leads to a definitive conclusion. William, the architect of this cold strategy, reportedly convinced his father that the crown cannot coexist with a parallel commercial narrative that depicts it as a villainous antagonist. "We cannot allow the monarchy to be a product on a shelf," was the guiding principle. By signing this final decree, Charles has sent a shockwave that cannot be ignored. He has chosen the survival of the institution over the comfort of his son. He has defined the terms of engagement for the future, proving that in the game of sovereignty, the safety of the crown is the only priority that matters. The era of elasticity is over. The line has been drawn in ink, and the Sussex camp is left to face a sobering reality. Without the official backing of the crown, the brand they have built is nothing more than a fading echo. To understand why King Charles III's new decree has triggered a psychological earthquake in Montecito, we must deconstruct the complex legal machinery the palace has deployed. This is not a standard press release. It is a surgical application of the royal prerogative through an ancient yet potent legal instrument, the letters patent. Historically, letters patent allowed monarchs to issue edicts without the requirement of parliamentary approval. By issuing this new mandate in late 2025, King Charles has established an unprecedented threshold. He has attached usage conditions to royal titles. The secret here lies in the fundamental shift from the concept of a title as a permanent gift to a title as a conditional license. This means that while Harry and Meghan may technically retain their styles, they are no longer permitted to activate them in any context that generates financial gain without the explicit consent of the Lord Chamberlain's office. Why is this a death blow? For platforms like Netflix or major global publishers, the value of the Sussexes lies entirely in their official, sanctioned connection to the crown. By signing this decree, Charles has created a legal minefield for corporate entities. If a production or a book utilizes the Duke of Sussex title for promotion in a way that violates the sovereign's decree, those corporations could face intellectual property disputes and institutional litigation. This is how the palace cuts the supply lines of the Sussex brand without ever stepping foot into a public courtroom. Analytically, we see Prince William's fingerprints all over this strategy. William understands that Harry's survival in the attention economy depends on the blurred lines between private life and royal brand. By forcing Harry to choose to be either a silent royal or a private citizen in business, William has effectively deleted the gray zone the Sussexes have exploited for 5 years. The end of elasticity is now a legal reality. In California, the Sussex camp is reportedly in a state of silent panic. Sources close to the Duchess suggest that legal teams in the U.S. were scrambled to find a countermove, only to realize a bitter truth. Royal titles fall under the absolute jurisdiction of the British monarch. No court in California has the standing to interfere with how King Charles manages the honors he himself bestows. This is a perfect institutional quarantine. The decree also contains a sharp psychological sting. It creates a visible hierarchy of legitimacy. While working members like Princess Anne or Prince Edward continue to carry their titles with pride, Harry is placed on a special monitoring list. This strikes directly at the ego of a man who has long struggled with being the spare while craving the perks of the heir. King Charles has not just issued a document, he has issued an ultimatum. He has evicted Harry from the Crown's ecosystem of power, leaving the Sussexes to discover a sobering truth. When the golden luster of the title is stripped away by legal red tape, the brand they built on grievance may have nothing left to sell. The heavy silence hanging over Montecito following King Charles III's decree is not a sign of peace. It is the sound of a brand bubble finally bursting. The secret that Harry and Meghan have desperately tried to conceal is now exposed. Their value to global giants like Netflix was never about their creative talent or their unique perspective. It was entirely predicated on their exclusive access to the crown. By stripping away the right to activate their royal titles for commercial gain, King Charles has effectively turned the Sussexes' greatest asset into a legal liability, a ruin in the middle of a high-stakes marketplace. Let's analyze this financial pain point. Every multi-million-dollar contract signed by the Sussexes was built on an unspoken premise that they were the American royals. However, with this new decree, any project using the style Duke of Sussex to generate profit without palace approval now triggers escape clauses in their existing contracts. Netflix and other corporate partners are the most pragmatic entities on the planet. They bought a prince, not a fading celebrity with a list of old grievances. As Charles chokes off the legitimacy of their titles, a domino effect has begun. Investors are quietly retreating, realizing the legal risks are now too high to justify the investment. This move bears the unmistakable signature of Prince William's soft power strategy. William didn't need to pick up the phone to Hollywood CEOs to ask them to stop working with his brother. He simply changed the rules of the game in London. By redefining the title as a conditional license, the palace has made the Sussexes legally toxic. Why would a global corporation risk an intellectual property dispute with the British Crown just to promote a documentary about ancient family feuds? For Meghan Markle, this is a devastating blow to her American Riviera orchard venture. Her plans to build a luxury lifestyle empire based on royal prestige have been shaken to the core. Without the official glow of the monarchy, her brand is reduced to just another celebrity lifestyle label in a saturated California market. The only thing that made her different, her royal status, has been systematically dismantled by the king. Furthermore, the decree pierces the veil of elite pride. In the world of high society, a title is a VIP pass into the most exclusive circles of power. Being placed under special monitoring regarding the use of that title is a public demotion seen by the entire world. Harry, who grew up within the absolute protection of the sovereign, now faces a harsh reality. He is being transformed into an institutional outcast. King Charles's decree has not only strangled their finances, it has destroyed the Sussexes' ability to reinvent their brand. As financial resources dry up and institutional credibility is withdrawn, they are trapped in a dangerous loop. The more they speak out to regain attention, the more they violate the decree, and the more isolated they become. This is a siege without a single shot being fired, but its destruction of the Montecito commercial empire is total. The palace has proven that real power does not lie in social media followers, but in the authority to define who belongs to the crown and who is discarded. King Charles III's final decree is not merely a strike against bank accounts or legal standings. It is a direct, calculated assault on the very architecture of Prince Harry's identity. For his entire life, Harry existed within the shadow of being the spare. While a position of inherent insecurity, it was always cushioned by the absolute protection and prestige of the monarchy. However, by establishing these ironclad boundaries, Charles has effectively yanked away the final safety net. Harry is no longer a spare with a potential role to play. He has been transformed into a spectator, a literal outsider, looking in on the history of his own bloodline. The secret behind this psychological collapse is the loss of institutional legitimacy. In Hollywood, Harry utilized his royal style as a titanium shield to deflect his lack of professional experience in the cutthroat entertainment industry. When the king's decree strips away the right to activate that shield for profit, Harry is suddenly exposed to the raw, unforgiving glare of reality. He is no longer seen as a representative of a 1,000-year-old institution, but merely as another celebrity attempting to monetize old memories. This shift creates a profound identity crisis that even the most expensive California therapy can rarely soothe. Within the walls of Montecito, the pressure is mounting on the Sussex relationship. Meghan operates on the cold logic of ambition and results. When Harry can no longer provide official royal value to drive commercial deals, the very foundation of their partnership begins to vibrate with tension. Harry, who traded everything, his family, his military ties, and his homeland for a new life, now finds himself in a no-man's land. He cannot return to London as a victor, and he cannot progress in America without the official glow of the crown. This strike by Charles also weaponizes Harry's greatest fear: institutional erasure. In the world of royalty, presence is defined by duty and title. By suspending his commercial title rights, the king has performed a procedural deletion. Harry remains a son by blood, but he is no longer part of the monarchy's future narrative. He is being removed from the ceremonies, the strategy, and the vision of the reign. This is a punitive isolation, forcing Harry to confront a devastating truth. The world keeps turning, and the crown continues to shine, even in his total absence. Prince William, the architect in waiting, has sent a silent but heavy message through his father's pen. You cannot burn down the house and expect a seat of honor in the parlor. This psychological fallout was not an accident. It is the inevitable consequence of a man who underestimated the power of the institution he thought he could outrun. As the Sussex luster fades, Harry is left with a haunting question. Was the price of freedom worth the total loss of his identity? For 5 long years, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex existed in what palace insiders called the Royal Grey Zone. This was a unique, self-carved space where they could be royal for the cameras and private citizens for the contracts. They leveraged the ambiguity of their status to claim privacy when criticized, yet invoked their titles when negotiating with corporate giants. However, the secret behind King Charles III's final decree is that it was designed specifically to collapse this gray zone forever. By attaching rigid conditions to the use of royal styles, the king has forced a binary reality. You are either a sanctioned working royal or a private commercial entity. There is no longer a hybrid option. This strategic shift represents the ultimate administrative coldness. Unlike the emotional outbursts seen in tabloid headlines, this move is surgical. It is the language of lawyers, constitutionalists, and the Lord Chamberlain's office. By removing the ability to profit from the blur, the palace has effectively unmasked the Sussex brand. For Prince William, who is widely seen as the architect of this proactive defense, the goal was never to win an argument, but to end the negotiation. William understands that a monarchy survives on its exclusivity. If the Sussexes can sell a light version of the monarchy in America, the original institution in London loses its value. Therefore, this decree acts as a high tensile wire fence, separating the sacred from the commercial. Analytically, we must look at the procedural deletion occurring here. In the past, the king's love for his son often clouded the institution's tactical response. But in late 2025, the family has finally been superseded by the institution. The gray zone allowed Harry to believe he was still part of the inner sanctum while living in California. The new decree forces him to realize he is now a foreign contractor with a revoked clearance. This is a profound psychological blow. When the administrative machine of the monarchy turns cold, it doesn't shout, it simply deletes your access. In Montecito, the loss of this hybrid status creates a massive brand void. Their business model relied on being half in, half out, a status the late Queen Elizabeth II famously denied, but which they managed to maintain through media perception. Charles's decree has now made that perception a legal impossibility. Without the gray zone, the Sussexes are just another high-profile couple in a city full of them. The uniqueness of their offering has been neutralized. This part of the strategy proves that the most effective way to defeat a disruptive narrative is to remove the ambiguity it thrives upon. The palace has stopped playing the game of PR and started playing the game of sovereignty. Harry is no longer a royalish figure. He is a man with a title he can no longer use to open doors in Hollywood. If Prince William is the sword in this institutional defense, then Catherine, the Princess of Wales, is the unbreakable shield. The secret behind the King's final decree lies not just in what it says about Harry, but in what it protects for Catherine. Within the inner sanctum of the palace, senior aides refer to the strategy of the last 5 years as the Catherine Protocol. While the Sussexes utilized every available media megaphone to broadcast their grievances, Catherine did something far more dangerous to their narrative. She remained absolutely, hauntingly silent. By issuing this final decree, King Charles has officially validated that silence as the supreme moral high ground, effectively delegitimizing Meghan's vocal activism as mere noise in the face of duty. Analytically, we must understand the psychological contrast being drawn here. In the attention economy of Hollywood, visibility is currency. But in the world of the British monarchy, mystique is power. Meghan Markle operates as a content creator, where every emotion is a marketable asset. Catherine, however, operates as an institutional anchor. Her refusal to litigate her private life in public has created a vacuum that the Sussex narrative simply cannot fill. The decree reinforces this by ensuring that the Duchess title can no longer be used as a competing brand against the princess. Charles has essentially signaled that there is only one legitimate female archetype for the future of the crown, and it is the one who prioritizes the institution over her own truth. The Catherine factor was decisive in the king's decision-making process. Sources close to the sovereign suggest that Charles viewed the sustained attacks on Catherine as an attack on the future of the monarchy itself. By framing Catherine as cold or calculating, the Sussexes weren't just attacking a sister-in-law, they were attempting to dismantle the credibility of the next queen. The final decree is the king's way of saying that the era of using Catherine as a punching bag for commercial clicks is over. If Harry and Meghan wish to continue their narrative, they must now do so without the protective luster of the titles that once gave their words weight. For the Sussex camp, this is a devastating realization. They underestimated the power of dignified restraint. In the eyes of the global public, particularly the core demographic that sustains the monarchy, Catherine's stoicism during her health crisis and the Sussex attacks has earned her a level of moral capital that no PR campaign can buy. The decree is the institutional lock on that capital. It isolates the Sussexes in a cycle of self-justification, while Catherine remains elevated, untouchable, and silent. This part of the strategy proves that in the long game of royalty, the one who says the least often holds the most power. The palace has stopped defending Catherine with words. They are now defending her with statute. The most devastating consequence of King Charles III's final decree is the permanent destruction of what Prince Harry once called his global bridge. For 5 years, the Sussexes thrived on the perception that they were the bridge between the ancient traditions of the United Kingdom and the modern, progressive values of the United States. They marketed themselves as the modernizers who could operate in both worlds. However, the secret behind the palace's latest strike is that it has officially demolished that bridge. By stripping the commercial legitimacy of their titles, Charles has not just moved Harry to another continent, he has placed him in permanent institutional exile. Analytically, we must look at how this changes the gravity of power. In Hollywood, the Sussexes were valuable because they provided a direct, albeit unauthorized, link to the mystery of the British crown. They were the royal rebels, but with the new decree, that link is severed by law. Corporate America, from Silicon Valley to the high finance sectors of New York, operates on the principle of access and influence. Once it becomes clear that Harry and Meghan no longer possess the veto or the ear of the king, their currency in these elite circles plummets. They are no longer bridge builders, they are simply expatriates with a fading story to tell. The geography of exile also carries a heavy psychological cost. Harry is now realizing that the Montecito bubble is not a fortress, but a prison of his own making. In London, he was part of a 1,000-year-old narrative that didn't require him to perform to remain relevant. In America, relevance is a daily battle. Without the institutional backing of the crown, the Sussexes are forced to compete with reality stars, social media influencers, and political activists, many of whom are far more skilled in the art of the hustle. The decree ensures that they enter this arena without their most potent weapon: sovereign uniqueness. Prince William's strategy here is one of strategic devaluation. By isolating the Sussexes geographically and institutionally, the palace is waiting for the natural laws of the attention economy to take over. They know that without fresh royal content, the public's interest in the Sussexes will inevitably wane. The decree is the institutional lock that prevents them from ever refreshing that content. This part of the narrative proves that the monarchy doesn't need to attack Harry. It simply needs to wait for him to become irrelevant. For a man who has lived his entire life at the center of the world's gaze, being rendered institutionally invisible is the ultimate punishment. The bridge is gone, and Harry is left on the other side, watching the crown move forward into a future that no longer includes him. The true brilliance of King Charles III's final decree lies not in its immediate impact on Prince Harry, but in its long-term shielding of Prince William. In the cold, calculating world of constitutional survival, this move is known as a generational firebreak. The secret that the public often misses is that Charles is performing a surgical extraction of a problem that could have plagued the monarchy for decades. By issuing this decree now, the king is ensuring that when William eventually ascends the throne, he will not inherit the Sussex mess. He is absorbing the personal and public backlash today, so that the future king can start his reign with a clean slate, free from the distractions of a rogue commercial branch in California. Analytically, we must understand the concept of succession insurance. For William to be an effective king, the institution must be stable, dignified, and most importantly, beyond the reach of tabloid-driven commercial narratives. The decree effectively Sussex-proofs the monarchy. By codifying the rules of title usage, Charles has removed the burden of conflict from William's shoulders. If Harry attempts to challenge the crown in the future, he won't be fighting his brother. He will be fighting a settled, legal precedent established by his father. This is the ultimate gift of a sovereign to his heir, the gift of institutional peace. For Prince Harry, the realization of this firebreak is a bitter pill to swallow. He is discovering that his father's final decree was not an act of emotional retaliation, but an act of statecraft. In Harry's mind, he was fighting a family battle. In the king's mind, he was managing a constitutional threat. The decree signals to Harry that he is no longer viewed as a beloved son in exile, but as a threat vector that has been successfully neutralized. The palace has stopped hoping for Harry's return and has instead planned for his permanent institutional absence. This shift in perspective is what makes the decree so harsh. It is the finality of a door being locked from the inside. This part of the strategy reveals the cold reality of the Windsor bloodline. The crown always comes first. The firebreak is now complete. By isolating the commercial ambitions of the Sussexes through administrative law, Charles has fortified the walls around William and Catherine. He has ensured that the Spares rebellion cannot ignite a fire that burns down the heir's future. The Sussex camp is left to realize that they didn't just lose a title, they lost their ability to haunt the future of the monarchy. The king has spoken, the ink is dry, and the path to the future has been cleared of its greatest distraction. King Charles III's final decree has triggered what media psychologists call a cognitive purification. The secret behind the public's reaction isn't one of outrage, but a collective sigh of relief. After 5 years of being bombarded by polarizing headlines, the global audience, particularly the core demographic of 50 to 80-year-olds in the US and the UK, has reached Sussex fatigue. By formalizing these boundaries through administrative law, the king has liberated the public from the perceived obligation to choose a side. When a royal title is no longer tethered to actual power at the palace, the story of Harry and Meghan is effectively demoted from a national crisis to mere celebrity noise. Analytically, we are witnessing the total collapse of the royal-ish myth. The Sussexes' brand survived on the shimmering, ambiguous glow of royal rebellion. Audiences watched because they wanted a mirror into the palace's velvet-curtained secrets. But when Charles severed the commercial link to the title, he effectively shattered that mirror. If Harry is no longer an official representative, and if his words no longer carry the weight of the sovereign, his narrative is reduced to private grievance. The decree has stripped them of their exclusivity. In the attention economy, exclusivity is priceless. Popularity without institutional substance is worthless. This strike also initiates a powerful moral pivot. The public has begun to re-evaluate the silence of Prince William and Princess Catherine. What was once framed by the Sussexes as coldness is now being recognized as the dignity of duty. The contrast has become too sharp to ignore. On one side, a silent sacrifice for the nation, even amidst personal illness. On the other, the commodification of a title for streaming deals. The King's decree has nailed this perception into the public consciousness. Harry and Meghan are now trapped in a new, inescapable label, ex-royal. In the high-stakes marketplace of Hollywood, this is a label with a rapidly approaching expiration date. In California, this reality is becoming increasingly bitter. The invitations to A-list summits and the honorary roles in global charities are beginning to thin out. Why? Because corporate partners no longer see the value add of the British crown when associating with the Sussexes. They realize that standing next to Harry now carries an institutional risk without any sovereign reward. This is a systematic social isolation. King Charles didn't need to ban anyone from befriending his son. He simply made the association value neutral. This part of the strategy proves that real power doesn't need to win a debate on social media. It simply reshapes the reality everyone lives in. The final decree has reset the world's royal order. The crown has reclaimed its mystery and its respect, while the Sussexes are left in the neon, soulless glare of showbiz. This reset is irreversible. The public has moved on, looking toward William and Catherine as the symbols of stability, leaving Harry behind, as a fragment of a turbulent past they no longer wish to revisit. As the dust settles on this historic intervention, December 23, 2025, will be remembered not as a day of family heartbreak, but as the day the Sussex exception was permanently closed. For 5 years, the British monarchy allowed an unprecedented ambiguity to exist, a gray zone where royal status was leveraged without royal accountability. By signing the final decree, King Charles III, supported by the steely resolve of Prince William, has declared that this era of elasticity is over. The secret behind the palace's victory is simple. They realized that a monarchy cannot survive by being liked. It survives by being defined. The decree is the definitive act of that definition, a boundary drawn not in anger, but in the permanent ink of statecraft. Analytically, we must conclude that the monarchy has emerged from this crisis more legible than ever before. In the modern age of permanent exposure, the palace has chosen a future that is less performative and more governed. They have signaled to the world that the crown is not a participant in its own commodification. By sacrificing the personal connection with Prince Harry to save the institutional integrity of the crown, Charles has performed the ultimate act of a sovereign. This is the Iron Crown strategy, a monarchy that prioritizes its thousand-year continuity over the temporary fluctuations of celebrity culture. Image: a final shot of the Buckingham Palace balcony with the lights of the city dimming, leaving only the royal standard flying high in the moonlight. For Harry and Meghan, the story ends not with a bang, but with a recalibration. They are no longer the royal rebels haunting the corridors of power. They have been recontextualized as a private family living a private life in California. The shock to the Sussex camp was the realization that the palace was finally willing to let them go completely and institutionally. The door has been locked, the keys have been handed to the future king, and the narrative has moved on. As our deep analysis concludes, the message to the global audience is clear. Duty over display. Dignity over drama. The crown has set its terms, and in doing so, it has begun quietly to rebuild. The Sussex saga is no longer a current event. It is a closed chapter in the long, turbulent history of the House of Windsor. The king has spoken, the line has been drawn, and for the first time in years, the palace is at peace. The institution has outlasted the content, and the monarchy remains, as it always has, the silent, enduring center of the storm.